The rich and the poor. You've certainly met some in your lifetime, whether they're out and working in huge businesses or sitting on the streets holding out cups for money. Despite how different they may seem, these two sides of the same coin have a huge thing in common: insanity. These two individuals put up a mask of normality, walking around like normal people of society. But behind it, there's something very, very wrong with them. Better yet, these two sides would absolutely hate the crap out of each other. Patrick Bateman, America's greatest psycho, and Arthur Fleck, the Joker of Anarchy. I'm Heaven, sit down for the show, and get ready to figure out who would win on the Battlegrounds. Patrick was never a normal child. That fate was decided the moment he was born into this world. Born to two people we don't know the names of, his mother had clear mental issues, and he had a brother named Sean. For whatever reason, they did not like each other, at all, being opposites in many ways, especially later in life. Later on, Patrick's dad was able to get him connections to work at his place called Pearson Piers, gaining a large status at the company. However, unknown to Patrick's friends, there is something wrong with him. See, Patrick had some psychotic tendencies. It's in the title of the movie, okay? And this would lead to some, let's just say, things I could never show you on YouTube unless I want to be taken off the platform forever. Even in high school, it's implied he has killed some of his previous girlfriends before dissecting their bodies apart. I think, at least. We'll get back to why later. Patrick didn't really care about anyone, feeling only two emotions: greed and disgust, and only having a girlfriend named Evelyn Williams just because he wanted to fit in with society, which is an oh-so-ironic thought when going into later. Anyways, that's a pretty common trend with him, being a yuppie who would want to copy what was popular at the time, mainly from Donald Trump, who at the time was pretty famous on TV, and also The Patty Winter Show. However, Patrick's mask of sanity could only stay on so long, and killing random hobos wasn't gonna go anywhere. So one day, he took this random dude named Paul to his apartment, who was another worker at his place, and pretty popular, despite the fact that nobody can get anyone's names right at this place. He was also incredibly drunk, and Patrick decided to take his head clean off his shoulders with an axe. Now that we mentioned that, let's just get into his physical capabilities. Every morning, he goes through a daily exercise routine, always keeping himself in tip-top shape despite that disgusting face mask he uses. He has done pretty crazy stuff, like wrestling with an officer, chopping a woman in half with a chainsaw, ripping someone's veins out of their body. Okay, I think I'm gonna be sick. And being able to survive a car crash calculated to go up to about 672 kilojoules of kilojoules. And he was able to later wrestle an officer with a limp afterwards. Speaking of, let's get into weapons. As I've mentioned already, he has both an axe and a chainsaw, but he also has several thieves, bottles of acid, a spray of mace to, spray you with mace, an ice pick, and two guns, a Glock 17 and Magnum, giving him pretty good close and long-range options. When it comes to intellect, Patrick's very smart, being able to manipulate girls into falling for him. How? You don't want to know, man. You don't want to know. You don't want to know, man. Unless you're into some really freaky stuff. But I won't judge. Just inside I will judge. Anyways, he was able to run a company with several other bigwigs effortlessly, figured out what exact brand of clothes people were wearing just by looking at them, and was able to somewhat keep suspicion off of him when talking to, Norman Osborn? Neat so. I haven't watched the Spider-Man movies in decades. However, as he continued to murder people, mainly random girls he would bang, and then bang, because he had a weird fetish for this kind of thing, his mind was scattering into a million pieces. He started getting paranoid, thinking everyone was after him after Paul's death, with only Jean actually caring about him. If you want to know, she's a random secretary lady. Gene was one of the only people who actually seemed to care about him, even if the reasons were based on Patrick's mask. But yet, Patrick actually started to catch feelings for her. Maybe, it's probably. When his mind started to wander about killing her, he actually restrained himself and decided not to do horrible NSFW stuff that would make me incredibly depressed. Anyways, things were getting wilder and wilder, with his mind thinking people were following him or seeing messages on walls and ATMs. This eventually led to him thinking he was being chased through the city by police, making him go on a massive killing spree and blow up a police car with just a gun? After escaping, he called his lawyer and broke down, thinking he wasn't going to be able to escape this time. However, something strange happened. Before he went to work, he went to go clean up the bodies that he had with Paul and the other girls. They were gone. What? Where did they go? Anyways, when he went to work, he went and talked to his lawyer, and he straight up did not believe him. As to him, Patrick is way too goody two-shoes. How could the great Patrick Bateman kill so many people? However, the most shocking revelation was that Paul, the dude he killed, that lawyer just talked to him a week ago. Okay, so this is where we get into the really, really annoying part of this debate, mainly from Patrick's side. Hallucinations. There's a lot of them. So, Patrick's mind is so fragmented that he can't tell what's real and what's not real. And it kind of complicates things when it comes to feats. And this is something that even me and a fellow friend of mine kind of don't agree with. It's kind of hard when it comes to this movie. But here's my interpretation. A lot of the crazier stuff that happens, like the vein ripping, I don't entirely agree, or at least think happened. Mainly just because it's much more likely that's just Patrick's very perverted mind doing a lot of that, because he is a very kinky man. Very kinky. I mean, he bites in bed. I also don't believe that Paul was actually killed like it was shown in that scene. Sure, it's very funny, but from a story standpoint, I think it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for a cover-up to be happening in this random building, especially since people usually kind of just forget about these kinds of people a lot of the time. So, yeah. There are certain feats that I do think do somewhat happen, like the car crash, though not entirely because of the whole police chase, which I do believe was fake. Yeah, there's a lot more to go over, but look, if I went to go over every single one, it would take like a decade. Let's just keep going on to what's simple, okay? Going over the rest of his weaknesses, it's not big. He's just perverted, he's sexist, and he's homophobic. Yeah, not great man. Not great man. After this revelation, he thought he had truly gone insane, no longer knowing what was real and what was not. Quite ironic that he was trying so hard to fit into society when he was fitting in all along due to how bland he is. However, Jean was still there for him, and later on, they got married and even had a child. And something happened, to Patrick. He actually started to care for his son and wanted to make sure he was a somewhat goodish father. However, that did not change his murderous nature at all. So, yeah. Note that whenever you encounter Patrick, you might think you're talking to him. In reality, he won't be there. He simply won't be there. The Joker, one of the most famous villains of all pop culture history, and has a great balance of humor and threatening presence to make him stand out, especially against his arch-nemesis, Batman. Let's be honest, the Batman Arkham games, mwah, perfect, love them. Childhood memories. However, what if we had a more tragic version of the Clown Prince of Crime? Enter Arthur Fleck, son of Penny Fleck. He wasn't anything too special, just a poor dude who worked as a clown and looked after his mom. However, he had dreams for something bigger, to become a comedian akin to his hero Murray Franklin. However, due to a condition with spelling that could kill 10 men, he would burst out into uncontrollable bursts of laughter. This made him mocked by his peers, constantly bullied by the public, and worst of all, he was usually punished by his boss despite not actually being the one responsible for it. However, it all came to a breaking point when he had his one bad day. A fellow worker of his, Randall, handed him a gun to protect himself. Smith & Wesson Chief Special. It's just a normal gun, but it's also a gun, so I don't think it matters too much. It's gonna hurt you if you get shot between your forehead. Anyways, he brought it with him for safety, right to a hospital full of children. Bright move, pal. Bright move. To make a long story short, he got fired, and on the way home, he got beaten up by 3 punks who were friends of Thomas Wayne. All of this bullying had finally made Arthur snap, and he shot the 3 dead. This led to Thomas getting wind of this and calling people like this clowns. Arthur was deeply upset by this, but this also caused several other people of Gotham to also be upset and begin wearing clown masks. However, Arthur unknowingly basically caused a full-on rebellion against the Gotham government, I guess. Pretty impressive for Arthur. However, Arthur wasn't completely alone after this whole, murder. He had a woman named Sophie who had felt a deep admiration for. Yeah, he's kind of a hopeless romantic. Bisexual and all, As things progressed, Sophie began helping him with stuff while he was going through his problems. However, things began to change when he began going through his mother's history. She tricked him to thinking Thomas was his father, making him go to the gates, meet a young Bruce, and also strangle the hell out of Alfred. Which is pretty impressive since, not gonna lie, Alfred's kind of built here. I guess that is a somewhat good segue into going into some of Arthur's strength displays. He isn't anything too crazy, at least compared to the last 2 videos I did, but he was able to do stuff like crack a window with relative ease, punched a clock off of a wall pretty handily, can take beatings from and abuse from the guards in the Arkham, and in general is just able to take a beating. Really, he just has incredibly good endurance for a really scrawny, malnourished dude. However, anywho, after some totally legal activity by stealing his mom's Arkham files, he discovered that she not only lied about that, but her and her boyfriends would regularly abuse him and leave him malnourished, explaining his Henry Stickmin build. #relatable. Due to this, and earlier watching the show he loves make fun of his run-up gag of just laughing, look, it's a condition, man. It's a condition. He went and decided to thank his mother with a dear old pillow fight party. She did not win that pillow fight. He had no idea what to do, and sat in Sophie's living room. But then, a plot twist formed. Sophie never actually talked to him. It was all in his head. And, no, she was afraid. Because, if someone broke into your house and just kind of sat there, I would be kind of freaked too. Arthur had no idea what the heck he was going to do and thought of, ending himself. But then he got a call to come onto the very show he loved so much, after all the laughs he got from his bad skit. Arthur did so, getting some clown makeup, making a visit from Randall. Technically it's the other way around, but whatever. Deciding to thank Randall for giving him that gun, by stabbing him directly in the neck, and was pretty impressively able to hide away from detectives. This isn't a crazy intelligent feat or anything, again, compared to the last 2, but it still shows that Arthur isn't stupid when he went in to blend in with the crowd to get away from the detectives. He definitely can improvise on the spot. Anyways, he ends up getting himself onto the show, and he was originally planning on, blowing his brains out on live television. But after feeling like Murray Franklin had betrayed him, and felt like all he wanted was to just make fun of him, because, he kinda did, but whatever, he pulled out the gun and quote-unquote, gave him what he frickin' deserved. Arthur was seen as a hero from that day on from Gotham's citizens, the Clown Prince of Crime. Arthur ended up being taken to Arkham, where he spent the next couple years while his case was pending. This is where he met a woman named Harley, another inmate. Except she's actually a doctor who was there to meet the Joker herself, because I guess she really has the hots for clowns. Ugh, gross. Due to Harley's influence, Arthur actually kind of ended up screwing his own case over when she was able to manipulate him into going into the Joker persona more, which I guess kind of backfired on herself, but whatever. He fired her own lawyer. Wasn't exactly the greatest when at the court case with that midget man, and ended up just confessing at the end, which, granted, pretty good on him, good guy there. I mean, I guess bad guy for killing all those people, but, good on confessing. However, as his charges were being read out loud, a car bomb literally blew up nearby, knocking the wall down and causing several people to be injured. Arthur surprisingly survived. He not only survived, he walked out of that building and was able to run pretty handily out afterwards. Which is incredibly impressive considering that Harvey Dent, who was much further away from the wall, had half his face burnt off, while Arthur barely had any scratches to his shirt. This feat has a calculation of up to 0.0054 tons of TNT, which is strangely higher than both the Grinch without his tech and Jack Skellington, which is just so funny to think about. Not saying Arthur would win, God no, he would absolutely lose against those two. It's just, I really like the idea of him unironically being more durable than those two. Anyways, Arthur escaped the court and found Harley at the infamous stairs. But she no longer wanted to be with him, as he mentioned that he never was the Joker. It was just Arthur. And Arthur, he's not very hot. Sorry, man. Arthur was devastated as police found him and took him away to prison, which leads us to his biggest weakness, his own mind. While not as, fantasy-like, I guess, as the previous guy, he still has those scenes of, not real stuff, mainly involving Sophie and pretty much all of the musical segments, with a few key exceptions. This would lead to him, again, mixing up reality with fiction, which, could possibly be bad for him. Anyways, he ended up never getting to figure out his full sentence, as his biggest fan, some lame dweeb dude, who, was really disappointed, and told him a joke. Ended it with his classic line with Murray, giving him what he freaking deserved by stabbing him in the stomach and killing him, before carving a smile on his face. Wait a minute. Arthur died in prison, but yet, his impact in Gotham would never be forgotten. Especially by a young boy who lost his mom the night Murray lost his life. Oh, and his dad, but, we don't like Thomas that much in this version. Gotham ruined Arthur, but to him, his life was never a tragedy, only a comedy. Before we continue, this video is sponsored by me. Yes, me, with my very own Ko-fi. That's right, Ko-fi. If ever wanted your very own matchup? Well, now you can. With $50, I'll do your very own matchup. Note that I do have rules that you must follow, which I will have listed in the description down below. If you don't have the money for that though, you can simply just donate any lesser money just for general support.
It was a dark and stormy night in Gotham City, and the riots on the streets were getting worse and worse. Several cops laid on the ground as people in clown masks ran around with Molotovs in hand. In a dark alleyway, a random hotshot of Gotham was hiding away, trying to not get found. That was till...
Hello there.
The man looked up to see Patrick Bateman, suit and raincoat in all its glory, walking very casually towards him.
What the hell are you doing?
I was on a business trip to Gotham, and with returning some videotapes when all this happened.
Dude, get the hell down! You're gonna get shot! I just saw the Waynes get their brains shot out and left their child out in the air!
The man was interrupted with a quick stab to his stomach by Patrick. Patrick blankly stared at the man as he thrusted the knife against him multiple times, again and again and again, ending his life. Patrick got up, cleaning his knife off. I didn't hear a noise. He turned around to see Mort holding an umbrella while reading a map.
What a strange sight. This all must be my brain playing tricks on me.
Well, what do we have here?
Patrick and Mort look up to see a clown looking towards the former, blood dripping down his smile. The Joker had officially arrived. Mort scrambled away as Arthur walked towards Patrick, with some goons following behind him.
That's Patrick Bateman! Wanna kill him? Yeah, that rich elite will pay for watching us flounder! Yeah! Kill him! Kill him!
One of the goons is shot straight away, startling the other two and Arthur. He shoots the other two while Arthur jumps behind a dumpster.
We didn't even do anything, and you go and do that?
Patrick simply walks towards him while loading his gun. However, as he turns, Joker pulls out his gun and shoots him straight in the leg.
Fuck!
Patrick looks up as Arthur looks down with a mocking grin.
This is what happens when you aren't civil.
He points his gun towards his head, but the billionaire grabs his knife and stabs into his leg. Arthur drops his gun as he yells in pain. Patrick headbutts him, making the clown stumble backwards as the millionaire steadies himself up to his feet.
That is what happens when you mess with me.
Well, then let me tell you a joke. Knock, knock.
Patrick charges toward him with his knife, only for Arthur to sidestep, making him slam directly through a door and onto the ground.
Who's there? An asshole millionaire.
He pulls out some scissors from his pocket and lunges towards Pat. Patrick gets up quickly and holds him back, trying to push the butt end towards Arthur. Arthur holds back as the two are at a standstill with one another. Eventually, Patrick knees him, causing him to drop his scissors. Arthur spits in Patrick's eyes to blind him, before running off further into the building. Patrick picks up his gun from outside and follows afterwards. This leads him to the Urgan Theater, where Patrick finds bodies everywhere from the riot.
You're like the rest of them. You look down at us with resentment, with disgust. Now, though, you'll feel the pain we've gone through.
Patrick looks around to see where the voice is coming from, but it feels like it's coming from everywhere, and he's hearing laughter from all ends of the building. Is it that way? Is it this way?
He's in the walls. He's in the goddamn walls.
He picks up a chainsaw from the ground and begins swinging it towards the walls, tearing through the wood while laughing maniacally.
It looks like you're just as crazy as I, but you don't try to help!
From behind, Arthur stabs Patrick in the shoulder, making him grunt as he takes it out. He swings towards Arthur with the chainsaw, cutting a bit of his shirt as he moves out of the way. Arthur pulls out his gun once again, but Patrick's able to cut through his stomach during this, making him groan in pain. Blood begins pouring out as Patrick tackles Arthur onto the stage, beating him up.
I think we're the same, but I actually did something with my life. I'm a success. You're a failure. I'm perfect. You're a clown. You're nothing but a filthy dog that needs to be put down.
He begins strangling him as a crowd begins to cheer in the background. They cheer and cheer for the demise of Arthur as Arthur's sight begins to blur. This is the end of the Joker. Until Patrick is shot through the shoulder by a rioter in clown makeup.
You mess with him, you mess with all of us!
Patrick looks confused as Arthur looks up. He sees so many people, all for one goal, to save the Joker. He uses this to his advantage and pulls out his gun and shoots him directly through the tart. Patrick is shocked as he falls off the stage. More rioters begin pouring in, cheering for Arthur. Cheering, 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 as Arthur looks down on Pat.
Not so great when you're the one being hurt, is it? When we're beaten down, it doesn't mean anything. But when one of you are hurt or killed, it's newsworthy?
The crowd begins cheering louder and louder as Patrick looks up towards Arthur, thinking this is all just in his head.
This isn't real. This is...
Now, you get what you fucking deserve!
He shoots him through the head, Patrick's brain scattering into a million pieces as the crowd roars into louder cheers. Arthur looks towards the crowd, feeling joy in everyone loving him, before doing a small dance on stage. The camera zooms out, farther out, until it's only the one goon who is cheering him on as the curtain falls on Arthur.
Guess Patrick finally got what he was so longingly deserving. But how did this come to be? I won't lie, this result was incredibly close, and I myself thought that Patrick was going to win this when I first started this. And heck, my friend that did a little bit of the research with me still believes that Patrick would win. So if you want to check his video out and why he believes that, go check the description. I have it linked down there. However, going into my reasoning as to why I believe Arthur wins this, I think it's a lot more complicated than you would think. But let's start with Patrick's advantages, because despite being the loser, he might arguably have more advantages when looking at him from a glance. He would be faster when up close and personal with Arthur. He is horrifically stronger if you're using the hallucination feats as legitimate feats. He is much more experienced in killing. He's overall smarter. How did he not win? Well, that's where a big problem starts to come in, starting with the durability edge. Despite Patrick's humongous arsenal, with only really guns and knives being able to help him, if he uses something like, acid, it will probably hurt. But due to the fact that Arthur is about 30-ish times more durable, he would pretty much stonewall any punch he throws at him. Granted, this is pretty much the same thing if we go with Arthur going against Patrick in a physical round, as Patrick's car crash feat is a lot stronger than Arthur. So pretty much both of them would be having a hard time actually taking the other out with punches alone. And they both have knives and guns, so they could realistically pierce through the skin. However, this is where a big problem I feel comes into play with Patrick, his cockiness. I personally believe Patrick would be more likely to not kill Arthur right away. Yes, he has killed at random, like with the old lady, but this is not as consistent. Granted, Arthur only has 6 kills compared to Patrick's maybe 40. Again, depends on if you take the kills as literal. But Patrick is just much more cocky. He's more likely to try to mock Arthur before killing them right away. While Arthur, he's just gonna shoot him. Arthur hasn't really shown any level of cockiness. If he's gonna kill someone, he's gonna kill someone, okay? He's not gonna just squander the opportunity and not let him die. Again, we only have 6 kills on his belt, so there's not really any true way of knowing what Arthur would have done. But given this one personality trait, it means that Arthur is more likely to pull the gun on Patrick than otherwise. Also, and this is a big reason as to why I went with Arthur, maybe not the biggest reason, but it was a reason that did make me lean towards him. Really, the whole vague nature of American Psycho. It's really hard to tell what's real and what's not real with it, and a lot of the best feats are very easily explained as just being a hallucination. Really, a lot of that book and the movie can be put up to interpretation. Now, I personally am not a believer that everything was fake and that it never happened, mainly because the author himself seems to be against that line of thinking, but meaning that I personally think that should be, like, there were kills that did happen. For example, the hobos, they definitely probably got killed, like 99%. But but there's a lot of feats that are just really hard to tell if they actually happened. While with Arthur, while they may not be as impressive as those feats, at least there's more validity. Like, the car bomb feat definitely did happen. The car crash admittedly is more likely to have happened than most of the other feats, and it is arguably Patrick's best feat. However, it still has that vagueness of, did it actually happen? Or did it all happen in his brain in that scene? Again, it's all very vague, and Arthur simply has a much more confirmed basis on what's real and what's not. It's pretty easy to tell what's fake when watching the Joker films, at least when I watch the films. Musicals, obviously. Sophie, majority of the time, yeah, they're fake. There is the theory on the Joker 2 film just being a dream, but there's no actual evidence, at least to me, that supports this theory actually being true. Unlike American Psycho, where obviously not everything was just straight up a dream. A lot of it was a hallucination by Patrick, but again, there's more stuff helping Arthur than it is Patrick in that regard, and the fact that he has more of that concrete stuff going on. So, in conclusion, while Patrick might arguably be stronger, definitely faster, more competent, better experience, and a far bigger arsenal, Arthur was simply much more durable, had a much better killing edge to get rid of Patrick, and had more concrete feats to make sure that this psycho of a joke would finally be put to rest once and for all.